Hey, thank you for joining the Ed Sullivan Experience, broadcasting from our farm in Tennessee. I want to thank you for purchasing your ticket to Destination Unknown. That's right, that's the ride that's going to take you to hell and back. If you want to know about Bigfoot, you want to know about aliens, you want to know about UFOs and the paranormal, well, we got the people that have the stories and they're going to share them with you. So just sit back, enjoy the ride, keep your arms and legs in the vehicle at all times, and before you run out the ride screaming, please make sure the ride comes to a complete stop. So let's get the Ed Sullivan Experience started. Let's do this now. All right. Thank you for joining the Ed Sullivan Experience tonight. I have a very special guest tonight, Mr. Jerry Patterson. He's the author of a book called Kids Want to Know About UFOs, Bigfoot, Mysterious Creatures, Places, and People. So it's not just one book. He has a bunch of books. And I'll show you this right now. Put this in the camera so everybody can see it. Great book. Great book. If you have kids or grandkids, I highly recommend you getting this book. We'll put a link at the end of this video so you could go to Amazon and purchase the book. And if you're listening to this on the audio podcast of the version, we'll explain where on Amazon you can go get it. So, all right, Jerry, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Ed, and thank you for having me on.
Oh, I thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Yeah, I found it fascinating. I was searching the internet looking for guests for this show, and I happened to go on Amazon, and I was looking to purchase a book for somebody, and I saw this book, and I was intrigued. So I went and ordered the book, and it came in the other day, and I read it, and I thought, this is great. I would love to have this guy on here as a guest. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on here as a guest is you wrote this book for kids, which is fantastic. I mean, I have 8 kids. I have grandkids. I can't think of anything else. And my kids and my grandkids, they all know I do this podcast. They all know that, Grandpa, see, Bigfoot Grandpa, and big UFO fan, aliens, paranormal, things like that. So they all know. And this is a perfect book to explain a lot of the stuff that they may have questions about. So what made you decide to write this book?
Well, I've always been interested in all facets of the paranormal, and after I retired from teaching, I really needed a couple of things. I needed something to do, and also I needed some extra dough. So I signed up for a online writing class, and it was very good. And so one of the things they talked about was, of course, you want to write something that you have some passion, or at least that you're interested in reading about yourself. And for me, that was, the paranormal. And so I liked kids, and I was trying to think of something that I could write about to kids, but yet that wasn't childish, I guess. The only way I can put it. I wanted to make it basic, and so I came up with the idea of Kids Want to Know About. I think the first one I wrote was Kids Want to Know About UFOs,
right?
And then Kids Want to Know About Bigfoot. Kids Want to Know About mysterious creatures, mysterious people, mysterious places. So I basically it was a lot of fun for me.
And that's what I love about it, is because when I was a kid, they didn't have books like this. I would have loved to have had a book like this. I found one book on Bigfoot, which was the Gimlin video book that talked about the famous video. That was the only one I could ever find. So for the longest time, I've always believed there was only one Bigfoot. I didn't realize till I got older that there was many Bigfoots. Didn't realize. UFOs, aliens, all that, and I always had questions, and I always wanted to find out more information. I've never seen one. I want to, but more information would have been great. So, what grade were you a teacher in?
Actually, it's kind of interesting. I grew up in Modesto, California, which is in the Central Valley of California. and I went to Fresno State College. And I was going to be a teacher. And so I'd taken all the teaching courses. I was getting ready to graduate and go out into the teaching world. And I mean, I'm going to be very transparent here. I was arrested for possession of marijuana. It was like a joint. And I don't know how the state you live in is, but in California, it's legal. So, but at that time, it was a huge deal. And so I couldn't get a teaching credential. Wow. And so I did a lot of other things. And anyhow, I have no regrets. So I got into teaching kind of late, and I had to go back to school again, in fact, and take all the teaching classes, had to do the, the student teaching again. Finally, I got a job teaching independent study, which I loved, one-on-one with 7th through 12th grade, mostly high school. And most of them had been in some kind of trouble and or were on probation. And I just enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And that's kind of what I did most of the time where I was teaching.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, the marijuana. I live in Tennessee, so we're not legal here yet, But I'm thinking eventually it's going to be legal everywhere, and that's just the way it needs to be. That's my personal opinion. So anybody else can have their own opinions, but yeah, I just think it's ridiculous.
Right. Well, it had a drastic effect on my life because instead of going into teaching, I mean, I worked as a social worker. I worked as an assistant golf pro, musician, still do that, blackjack dealer in Las Vegas. I mean, you name it, and I think I've done it. So, right. But I don't regret it. It's a great adventure.
And that's, I think, what drew me to you, because I was reading your bio, and I'm like, man, he has done everything. And then now finding out about the teaching with the marijuana and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, this explains why he's done everything. So yeah, that was pretty good, because I've had like 3 jobs in my entire life. I'm 58, so I've had 3 jobs. Mm-hmm. That was it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that I thought that was great. So did you talk to any kids when you were writing this book to get their opinions, or did you say, hey, what do you guys want to know about UFOs on your first book, or did you just
yeah, I did. I had a friend of mine, and he had kids that were 10, 12 years old, and so I talked about it with them. I had a nephew and a niece, actually, both about that same age group, and that was kind of the bottom end. I mean, I guess, a 6, 7-year-old could read some of that stuff, but some of the feedback I've gotten, most of it is very good. I mean, the ratings have been great, but sometimes I'll get a negative review because a 7-year-old was scared by it. Well, yeah, maybe so. I could see that, It's kind of a scary thing sometimes. Right. But so, it's one thing to write about Bigfoot or read about Bigfoot, but from personal experience, I can tell you, from being out in the middle of nowhere at 3 o'clock in the morning in a tent and hearing footsteps outside, it's scary.
Yeah, and I want to get into that in just a minute. I want to talk about that stuff. But yeah, I read some of the reviews too, and I was kind of, I want to say, pissed a little with some of these people, because it's like, okay, what are you doing for your part to help educate kids on this stuff? And parents are the ones buying this book. If you don't want your 7-year-old reading it, don't give them the book. I mean, it's plain and simple. Read the book before you give it to your kids. Before I give this to my grandson, I'm reading the whole thing. I haven't found anything in this book that is going to scare my grandson. So it's like, it's your responsibility as a parent to make sure you know what your kids are doing. And again, right. That's my opinion. And but some of the reviews I saw that were negative were just people that are just I want to say stupid. Point blank, they're just stupid. I mean, come on. They have nothing better to do than comment on somebody who's actually trying to make a difference. So, they
Well,
can.
it's true, because sometimes some of my reviews, people will give it 1 star because they didn't get the book on time. I have
That's
nothing
not
to,
your fault.
that's Amazon, or something like that, or the book might have been torn by the time they got it, and that's something to do with the U.S. mail. So
Exactly.
you
Yeah, I
never
got
know.
I got mine on time, and it looks great. Everything was great. So, I mean, I don't have any problem. You'll get a great review from me, that's for sure. So,
Good.
so a couple of the things in this. I mean, and I was reading. Where did you get your research for some of this stuff? Because there was some stuff in here that I didn't even know, and I've done a bunch of research on stuff. Um, the one I can't remember the guy's name, um, but he had a notebook with the binary coding in it, which was something new. So now I'm researching all over the place for this guy because I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that was the that was, I can't think of the name of the forest,
Yes.
Rendlesham,
Right. Yep.
right next
Yep.
door to a nuclear in England, one of the the airfields that where there was some of the nukes were,
Right.
in England. That was in 1980. Yeah, I can't remember that soldier's name either, but that was very interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. So like I said, so where did you get some of this research from? Because like I said, I didn't even know about that until I read your book. So I'm glad I got it.
For me, I guess it's just, I was fortunate in a way. My mother was really different for those times because I'm older. I mean, I grew up in the 50s, and there wasn't much of this going on. People were not open open-minded at all.
Oh,
Whatever the government said, that's the way it was.
exactly.
And but my mom, totally open-minded, very into the metaphysical, and so that had a tremendous influence on me. I think having an open mind like I do, and so I just remember reading books back in the 50s. Um, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He wrote this thing in 53 or 54, and he's been ridiculed completely. But you might have read this. He claimed that he met with aliens out in the desert somewhere in, was it Southern California or
I think it was
Nevada?
Southern California. Yep.
And that was one of the first books really that I was aware of. And I think it came out in 53, 54, something like that. And whether it's true or not, that was, one of the first things I read. And I just have kept up. In fact, to this day, I have a Kindle account on Amazon, and I'm always looking for books on UFOs, Bigfoot, all those subjects because it's just something I'm fascinated by.
Right. And it's funny because reading these books, I'm like, you could probably do a whole nother series on these books again and update to everything that's probably transpired since you wrote these books.
Well,
Um,
that's true because all the tic tac, you know, um, events and the fact that the government has finally come forward,
yeah,
with
well, sort of.
a little bit,
Yeah,
here and
sort
there.
of finally come forward.
Yeah, kind of,
Yeah,
sort of. But
there's
there was
so much
certainly
more.
none of that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So at the time I wrote those, you know, that was not happening yet.
Yeah. Now and forgive me, I didn't even look to see when you first wrote these. When did you publish this? So when did you first write these books?
Um, I'm thinking it was like 2012, 2013.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot has probably transpired since then. And it's funny that
Yeah.
you talk about the guy that said he met the aliens in the desert in the 50s because I've got people I'm trying to get on my show right now that have said they've met aliens now. So it's come around where now it's acceptable. Back in the 50s, you'd have been labeled crazy if you were going around telling people that you had met aliens.
You'd have probably got hauled off.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. So, you had some experiences, you said, with paranormal, correct?
Hmm.
Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing those?
No, not at all. My first thing that really, I guess, happened with me was I was probably 15, 16, and a friend of mine, uh, in the summertime, he'd sleep outside in the backyard every night, and he lived right over in the next street. So, you know, in the Central Valley, it's like desert, man. It's hot in the summer, so it's a good place to be is outside.
Right.
So I'd go over there and we'd hang out and do what teenagers do, and finally go to bed. But he kept telling me, he says, "Man, I've been seeing these things in the sky, you know," and boy, that got my attention. And so we'd been doing this for about a month, where I just slept over in my sleeping bag on the lawn. And one night, sure enough, there were four lights that came over really low, stopped, and this is, in the mid 60s, so I know there was nothing that we had at that time, and it was, and then both of them just kind of, or all four of them just kind of went a little farther, and they weren't going very fast, and then all of a sudden they just took off, just like as fast as light, and it was that to me was my first experience with anything, and from then on it was like, okay, there's
How old
nothing
were you
else.
then?
Probably 15, 16 years old. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you tell anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been afraid of ridicule. It doesn't bother me. It's like, yeah, I can't say it doesn't bother me if people, but I always wish people were as open minded as I am.
Right. Yeah.
At
Oh, I
least
know.
to
And
consider it.
that that's one of the reasons I do this show is because I want people to be able to come on this show and to tell their stories without fear of ridicule or judgment or I mean, who am I to say whether you saw anything or whatever you did or if something's happened to you not? I just want to know. I want to hear the stories. I want to share the stories. And the more that I hear, the more that I find out from people, the more it makes me want to know more. So
Exactly.
I want to keep hearing it. I want to know, and I want to be able to find proof and to show the people that are saying, "Oh, this is not true. There's no way there's aliens." I mean, you have to be naive to think that we're the only people in this entire solar system that exists. I mean, you have to be
Right.
naive to think that.
Right. For sure. So that was my first experience. And after that, I had some experiences that I would say were more of the ghostly type thing. And one of those was we lived in a farmhouse, my wife and I, and we were sitting on the front porch and we heard voices inside. And my son was maybe 4 years old then, and he was asleep in the living room. And we flipped. I mean, we thought, wow, there's somebody in the house, and here's my
Right.
son just, and we went running in there and there was nobody there. And we had a bunch of different experiences like that, where the water would go on, in the bathroom, and the shower would run, and just weird stuff, and
And you
the
stayed
place
in the
just had a
house.
vibe. Huh?
You stayed in the house. I would have been gone.
Well, we weren't there for very long. No, we ended here. I don't think we really moved because of that. But yeah, you're probably right. I think she wanted to go before I did, But
Right.
and then my other experiences were related to Bigfoot, and I don't know if you want me to give that to you now or later.
No, yeah. Let's talk about it now if you want. That's great.
Okay, what happened with that was I'd never had any experiences, and really I've lived in the mountains in Northern California when I was younger for a few years, and where I live now is in the mountains of Northern California. So
Okay.
but I've never really, stumbled on anything or anything like that. But what happened was, this is probably 5 or 6 years ago. I got a call from Bigfoot Research Organization, BFRO in Washington, D.C. And it was one of their investigators, and I can't even remember his name, but he'd read my book. And he said, I really like the idea that you've written this book for kids, but it's not childish, and it's not silly. You just kind of presented facts, but in a real basic way. And I said, yeah, that's what I tried to do. And he said, would you like to go on an expedition, one of our expeditions? I said, heck yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, yeah. So I said, are there any in California? And he said, well, there's going to be 2 this summer. This was like in the winter, February or something when he called. I said, well, where are they? Well, one of them was in Southern California by a place called Mammoth Lakes, which I knew about, but it's kind of a long ways away. And he said the other one is in near a place called Pinecrest. And I go, wow, yeah, that's 40 miles away from where I live. I'm down for that.
Right.
So I went, and they're 3 nights, 4 days. And there was probably 50 people on that one. And it wasn't right in Pinecrest. They don't give you the exact location until it's time to go. And then they ask you, please don't tell people, because we don't want herds of people out here.
Right.
So I went, and like I said, there was probably 50, half and half, men and women. And we split into groups every night and walked around with our headlamps, and it was really a beautiful place where we were at. And I'd never walked around in the mountains at nighttime. I mean, that's a whole different thing,
Yeah, I was going to say, that's got to be kind of scary.
It's the spooky, yeah. Especially when you're looking for this creature that
right.
maybe could be pretty intimidating, So anyhow, we were walking, and I was with a group with actually another guy and 3 women. There was 5 of us, and we were going to this lake, and it was a dry lake. And we were just about there, and it was dark that night. I don't think there was any moon. And all of a sudden, off to my left, I saw eye shine, and bright, like a yellow color. And as soon as I saw it, I turned to the guy. There was a guy walking behind me, and I was going to tell him, and it was gone. I mean, gone like that. And so anyhow, the next day, we walked down there again just to see, where this was, because we couldn't see at night, how far it was.
Right.
And I knew exactly where it was at. And so we looked, and where I saw the eye shine was right next to a small pine tree. And it had to have been 9 feet tall, whatever I saw, and I don't think it was anything in the tree. It was next to it.
Right.
So that was pretty exciting. And then the girls had been on another expedition a few years earlier to the same place, and said right at this same area, they'd had like little rocks thrown at them as they were walking, which kind of freaked them out. Yeah. They didn't see anything, but so anyhow, I met some really good people, interesting people. I think that's the best part of some of these expeditions, where you can kind of figure out the people that you wouldn't mind, doing your own little weekend expedition with and spending some time with.
Right.
And so we did. And at that, I guess one other thing that happened during that is me and this guy Christopher, who we've become very good friends. And we were walking. We took a kind of a hike by ourselves, and we heard screams, that I've never heard before in the mountains. And they definitely weren't human. They were deep bellows. And So as soon as we heard it, we'd stop, and there wouldn't be any sound. And then we'd take a few more steps, another scream. And there was one coming from one side of the trail and another one from the other side. And there was a ridge kind of on each side. So we really couldn't see what was going on, but that was interesting. So those two experiences, and then my last one was last summer. We went to this same place, and there was just three of us, me and a couple of friends. And one morning I got up, and man, I was tired. One of the guys snores. I didn't know that. He was about 10 feet from me in his tent, and I hardly slept all night.
Right.
So finally I got up. Of course, he was up already. He'd had a great night's sleep. But so there was a rock about 20 yards away from where we were camped at. And this rock was probably, I don't know, 10 feet high. It was a big rock. Well, that's where I was going behind whenever I needed to, pee. And so anyhow, I did the thing this morning. I coming back out, and he's standing there, and he goes, "Did you see it?" I said, "No. What are you talking about?" And he said, because there's a meadow right behind there. And he said, "Well, I saw you go behind the rock, and then I thought it was a stump out there, and it just raised up, and it was about 6 feet tall, and not big, but it definitely wasn't a human. It was hairy, and it just walked quickly into the woods, which was only about 10 yards away." I didn't see it, and he said, "It looked to me like he was watching you." So I didn't see that. That's not something that happened to me, but this guy has been on a lot of different expeditions, and that's the first time he's ever seen anything like that. So
Wow.
that
Yeah,
was interesting.
that's fantastic. I mean, I have never been on one, so I would love to. I've got next week I have some guests on here. They're three women that they're called she squatchers. They are three women that go out and research and try to find Bigfoot. So I
Hmm.
can't wait to have them on and talk to them. But
Yeah.
going back to your story, so the one where you said you heard the screaming from one ridge to another. So do you believe that they were just communicating and letting each other know that, hey, there's somebody out here, there's humans out here looking at us?
That's what I was thinking.
Because I'm a believer that they are very well. They obviously have to be very intelligent because we've never captured one. We've never really gotten clear evidence, footage, or anything showing one. So they are, to me, very intelligent, which makes me wonder. And I've had this conversation with other people that I've had on my show before too. Could they be from another planet? Could they be? Could they have been dropped off here? I mean, they're that good at what they do. Um, some people tell me, well, no, they can't be because they're furry and they live in the woods but we don't know what life is like in these other planets. We don't know, you know, what kind of creatures in another planet could be. They could have been dropped off here. We don't know. So, but that's my opinion. What is your opinion on that? Do you believe that that
Well,
could be a case or?
I think it could be. You've you've probably heard firsthand sightings where people, and usually it's by accident, where they're walking along quietly and bang,
Yep.
and they said, I was looking at this thing and it was looking at me, and all of a sudden it was gone. I mean, it didn't turn around and walk or run. It was just gone.
Correct. Yep.
So who knows? That's part of the what they call the woo factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like woo.
Well, and that's what opens all this up to, again, having an open mind. When
Right,
when you're talking about this stuff, it's just like in your
right.
book, you talked about one of my favorite things as a kid, and I looked this up and probably read so many books on this, was the Bermuda Triangle.
Hmm.
And when I saw that in your book, I was like, yes, he put this in here. I mean, because nobody really talks about the Bermuda Triangle anymore, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, it's kind
But
of passe.
yeah, exactly. But for the longest time when I was a kid growing up, that was a huge thing. I mean, there were so many things that people had ships go over there and disappeared. Planes that flew over disappeared. They believe that Amelia Earhart disappeared through the Bermuda Triangle. Uh,
Hmm.
to me, that's one of those mysteries that you're like, God, I would love to know more. And then the more
Yeah,
as I got older and thought, well, maybe this is all part of another alien. Maybe there's a base down there. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
well,
I'm just opening more questions up to you so that you're like, okay, I got to write some more books on this.
well, I quit writing because I couldn't think of anything else to write about. But you're
Right.
giving me some ideas here. This is
Well, there
good.
you go. I mean,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah. you know, um, what was interesting for me is I lived in Mexico for 2 years, and we lived right on Lake Chapala, which is the biggest lake in Mexico.
Okay.
And what I discovered, because I worked with my wife and I were selling homes that were being built by a Mexican company there, and they wanted us to work for them because most of their clients were Americans and Canadians.
Right.
So I got to know a lot of the people I worked with and a lot of other people in 2 years. And it was interesting because one day there was a group of us that just kind of broke for lunch, and we walked down to the lake, and we were just kind of walking around on the beach and talking. And a couple of the girls said, right down there, and there was a little pier that runs off right there. And they said, when we were little girls, we were playing here in the summer. We were probably 10, and we saw these they call them flying saucers. We saw flying saucers come right over the lake really low, and they just stopped right over there by the pier, and they took off. Well, there was probably three or four other of their coworkers that were there, and they all had stories because they all grew up along that lake. And the interesting part to me was that and I think it's probably the way it is in that country, it's not a big deal. It's
They're
not a
used to
big
seeing
deal.
it.
Yeah, they would never ridicule you for it because, uh, it's kind of like the Native Americans with Bigfoot. It's just sort
Right.
of taken for granted, you know?
Hmm.
And maybe it's just that because of their culture, but uh, there was no ridicule, and they'd all pretty much experienced something or had close family or friends that had. And that area is known for quite a few sightings.
Well, and I think
Mexico, in fact.
yeah, and I think today in today's day and age, it's more accepted because people are looking at something different. They have more questions nowadays than they did before, or back in what I want to say is the old days, like the time when you grew up and the time when I grew up, people just didn't say things. They didn't talk about it because they were fearful in this country of ridicule. They were fearful of what was going to be said, what was going to be done to them. And a lot of that blame has to go with our government and what they did to keep everything a secret, to not share this information with everybody, and to actually take people away that had too much to say or you know investigated. They didn't want people to give this information out because they were fearful that the American people couldn't handle it. We couldn't handle it as a nation, that hey, there is something out there other than us.
Exactly. Um, that I'm trying to think of the guy's name. We just watched a show regarding him that worked at a place called S4, which was right near Area 51.
Hmm.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I
I
can't
can't
think
think
of his name offhand either.
but I mean, his life was basically ruined. For him coming forward like he did, because he had nothing to gain by that. and
Right.
he had a whole lot to lose. And um, of course, they said that he had lied about going to MIT and this college and having worked, on this and that. And then later on, they found out that yeah, for
He
some
did.
reason, somebody was able to remove, his records. Well, I wonder who that somebody was. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's like some of the people that I'm watching now, and some of the people that I've seen, like Dr. Stephen Greer. Okay, he's done some great stuff with the Unacknowledged and all these other shows, and um, I respect some of the stuff that he's brought out to everybody. But now I'm looking at him, and I want to say in a different light. And again, this is strictly my opinion because now he's selling an app, a $9 app to teach you how to sit in a circle and meditate and contact aliens. And I'm all for the American dream of making money, but I don't think you need an app to do it. I don't think I need to spend $3,000 to go to the Arizona desert and hang out with him in a circle and try to contact aliens. I
Yeah.
think I think there's other ways to be able to do that, and if you are sincere and you really want to get the information out with people. Your book was very inexpensive, and you probably put more time into writing it than what they're charging. So it's not like you're trying to gouge people into, hey, buy my $50 book. You know,
Right.
you can get my book for $9. And you
Yeah.
can get the Kindle version, audio version for free. So
Right.
you're sharing information. That's how he started.
Right.
And I think now because it's become such a big um, I want to say hit with everybody, and people want to know stuff. Now people are starting to ride this train of let's make $1 billion off this. You know,
Yeah, that's too bad, because I did watch Acknowledged and his second one, and I can't think of what it's called, but and I'm very impressed, and
me
because
too.
I liked his positive take on the UFO phenomenon rather than seeing some kind of a threat, which is so typical, of
Yep.
us, and where there was none of that, and but there was one thing that I wonder about because I really feel that he's right on as far as saying that if these people were a threat, we'd be gone. You
I say
know,
that. I say that every show that I talk to somebody about UFOs. In this day and age, if we don't know by now, if they wanted to destroy us, they would have did that already. There's there's no way that somebody that intelligent with that life force and everything, there's no way they would not have taken us out if that's what they were trying to do. And you're
exactly.
right. His first two movies were great.
Yeah,
His first two documentaries. This one on
right.
CE5 that he just did was great. But
Yeah,
it also opens up a lot of interpretation to, um, like I said, why do you need $3,000? Why do I have to pay $3,000 per person to come learn how to
right.
do this? I shouldn't have to.
I didn't even know that. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. I get emails from him on this that says, "Hey, you can come see my seminar," and I researched it. Okay, how much is this? And it's $3,000 a person. That's ridiculous.
So he's
To go
completely merchandised this thing.
Correct, to go to the desert. And there's other people that are doing the same thing, and I've listened to other people, and I'm trying to get other people on my show that do the same thing. I believe that what he's saying is true, that he can contact or that we can contact using our mind and the meditation and everything they do. But I don't believe we need to gouge everybody because this just puts everything
Right.
that you're writing and everything in a bad light. So now we're
Exactly.
trying to figure out what's fake and what's real. So when people
Right.
go, well, this is just fake, he's one of the reasons why that he started doing this to prove that it's real. But now he's almost convincing people that, hey, maybe this is fake. Did you make all this up? So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't aware of that, but yeah, you're right that he loses credibility that way, and
yep.
but
And I bought the app. I
one
bought the app.
question I have about that is okay, so if they're benevolent, which, his basic belief is, that they would have harmed us if they were going to, or we'd be long gone. But what about, how does the people abducted, how does the abduction thing fit in with that? Because their experiences don't sound that benevolent.
Correct. And from what I understand, and like I said, the research that I've done and people I've talked to, is there's so many different kinds of species. We were raised to believe that everybody is like this little green gray guy that I have, with the big eyes and the big head, and that's only just one species. But I also heard, I had a guest on here 3 or 4 episodes ago, and the abductions were actually orchestrated by our government in order to trade for technology. So
Yeah.
they said, here, if you give us this technology to do this, we'll give you some people to do some experiments on, to learn more about us. And that I totally believe. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it makes
Well,
sense to me.
I guess you probably heard that discussion was between Eisenhower when he was president and whoever the extraterrestrials were, where they made a
Yep.
deal, the one you're talking about. And his granddaughter completely stands by that. It says that there's no doubt. Yeah, it happened, which
I
I
would
thought
love
was
to
it.
get her on here. I would love to get her on here and talk about this.
Yeah, yeah,
But I totally believe I would not put that past our government to do. And if you look how fast we went from the 70s into the early 80s, how far technology advanced. I mean, one day we had 8 tracks, and then cassettes, and all of a sudden we had CDs that didn't last that long to downloading music.
right.
To downloading everything. All of a sudden, the internet popped up out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah.
Technology just advanced so fast and so quick. I'm like, how did that
Almost
happen?
overnight.
Yeah, I mean, I understand we have intelligent people, but it's just too coincidental for me.
There was an interesting book written by, and you might have read it, by a guy that was, he was an aide to one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff back in the 50s. I can't think of his name, but he claimed that this guy was Nathan Twining was the general, that he put this guy in charge of kind of being a go-between between what they had, what the government had found, the technology that they pulled out of some of these, downed ships and that sort of thing, and corporates, in order to see if they could come up. And that he felt that was definitely, why we had this, because he talked about that. And it was interesting. In fact, there was a show the other night where it was called Deathbed Confessions, and one of them was his, because he was quite elderly, and he's
Really?
stuck with his story, 100%.
Yeah,
That was interesting.
I'll definitely have to look at that show. Yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
stories out there from people that you want to say they're credible because they have stuck to the story forever, and their story hasn't changed. It hasn't wavered. So
Like Bob Gimlin.
exactly. And that's, to me, that was the Bigfoot story of forever. That was the best Bigfoot story video you can. And to this day, you still have people trying to debunk that video and that story.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like, how can you?
Yeah.
It's got to be real.
Yeah. Some friends of mine got to know him up in Washington, and they went to his house. Actually, lives in a trailer park, and him and his wife, and he's 87 years old now, I think.
Right.
And they said, this guy has made zilch out of this
Yep.
whole thing. And it's been really, I mean, he's been ridiculed and called a liar. And they said, he's the nicest little guy. He's just an old cowboy, good old boy. And if you get to know him a little bit, he saw that. He is not lying. There's no reason for him to lie on this, He doesn't have
Right.
much time left.
Exactly. And that would have been the time for him to come clean as at this age,
Yeah.
and for him not making any money. And that's one of the reasons, like I said, that's one of the reasons I brought up the Dr. Stephen Greer thing, is because like I said, I am all for everybody to make some money. I do this show right now. It costs me money. I don't make money doing this show. Eventually, I
Yeah.
want to make some money doing this show. But my main goal is to, like I said at the beginning, I want to get the stories out. I want to know. I want people to share the information without fear of ridicule, without fear of being judged. And I just want
Mhm.
to get it out because I want to know the facts. I want to hear from other people that have seen things like you have, that have heard things, that have done things and can prove, hey, yes, this is what happened.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's it.
So, all right. So before we end, because we almost at an hour here, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I would love to have you back if you do write another book. And so, from your bio, I guess you're leaving California and you are going to where? Maybe,
Um,
maybe,
where?
depending on your wife.
That's a maybe. Yeah. If it was up to me, we'd be going to Ecuador.
Ecuador. Okay.
Yeah. My cousins lived in Western Nevada forever, and they just kind of, I guess, they'd had it, I guess, with the U.S. And so they took a trip to Ecuador. They spent 3 months there and came home, sold everything they've owned, and their house, their cars, everything. Moved to
Wow.
Ecuador, and they love it. So we are going in February for a month and checking it out. I'm probably I'm more the adventurous type. I'd probably go stay there for longer. My wife, not so much.
Right.
So,
But there's been UFO sightings in Ecuador.
oh yeah, definitely,
So
definitely.
that, to me, that'd be a great place. You could do
Oh,
all
I
kinds of
agree.
interviews. You could
I
interview all
agree.
kinds of people and write a whole new book. So, all right. So
Yeah,
I know I'm trying to get you to write some more books because I love this book. So, so I do.
I probably will.
Oh, well, that's great. So I do have a
Yeah.
few more questions for you. Just gonna be real quick on whether you believe or not. Okay. So I know you believe in aliens, correct?
Yes.
Extraterrestrials. I know you believe in Bigfoot because you've actually seen and heard. Um, Mothman.
I'm not going to say I don't believe. I don't know. That's something
Okay.
I've read a few things, but I just don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I like to ask that one because when I first started this show, somebody introduced me about Mothman, and so I'm fascinated with that one because there's a lot of stories, and it's generated in just this one area in Pennsylvania. So I want to do some more research on that. Ghost and
Hmm.
paranormal,
Oh, definitely.
definitely. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Believe.
Um, and one last thing I wanted to ask you on your book. I noticed that you did UFOs, Bigfoot, mysterious creatures and places, and then you did people.
Hmm.
And I noticed, like in the book, you had like DB Cooper was in the book, which I
Hmm.
thought was fascinating. What made you decide to do people when you did this book?
Um, even though it's probably not I mean, some of them I suppose could be quasi paranormal, but that book was probably the least paranormal of the group. But I like people, and I find people fascinating, and
Me
especially
too.
those people. When I was young, I remember reading about Rasputin and how he had some kind of, I mean, he was able to what was it? The czar's little son that had the disease where he couldn't quit bleeding. He wasn't going to live,
Right.
and he was always in pain. And Rasputin came and was able to give him peace, and calm him down and stop the bleeding sometimes. Who knows how he did that?
Right.
So, in a way, some of the stories are on the edge of paranormal.
Well, the
But
mystery, like DB Cooper just disappearing
well, that's
and never
it.
being
That's
found.
interesting too. I
It
mean,
is. Yep.
so yeah, when people disappear, that's who knows why.
Right. Exactly. So the pyramids, do you believe those were man-made, or did we have some help with that?
Um, I've watched a lot of the alien or the ancient alien
Yep.
stuff,
Yep. Me too.
and yeah, in fact, I read what was his name? The guy that wrote the original book, Ancient Aliens, back in the
Oh,
'60s.
yeah. I don't. I
Uh,
don't have his name, but I know who you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah, and I found it interesting, and I think it's definitely possible. Especially like the Nazca lines. I
Hmm.
think those are pretty hard to explain. You really can't even see any. You certainly can't see the creatures unless
Right.
you're pretty high up in the air. So who knows? Yeah, I'm open to that.
Okay. So have you seen on Google? You know what Google Earth is, correct?
Right.
Okay. So there's a couple of places where you can see on Google Earth. If you have these coordinates, you can see the actual. You can see in the water like looks like an underground base. You can also see in the Arctic what looks like a spaceship if you zoom in that is half buried in the snow. Do you think that there are alien bases and things like that throughout this continent, throughout the globe?
I think it's very possible. It was interesting that one of the Tic Tac experiences was they were sent out to chase down this UFO, and it was over the water, and they could see the water swirling out in the
Yep.
ocean. And then it looked like the vehicle disappeared into the water. Well, boy, there's the government saying it right there. Why would they go down there?
Exactly.
What would be the reason?
I know. Exactly.
So it's possible. Like I said, anything's possible, and I would not be shocked at all.
All right. Well, I'm going to close on that. I do appreciate you being on the show. And again, I do appreciate you writing this book, actually, all 5 books. And
Well, thanks for
I'm going
having
to
me
put it.
on. I enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. And I'd love to, if you write another book or if you just got some more experiences or just want to talk, just let me know. We'll have you back on again. We'll post like I said, they can get your book on Amazon because that's where I got it.
Hmm.
Is there anything else you want to share with us before we go?
I think that's about it. I think
Okay,
that's
great.
about it. I think overall the whole alien thing is, I somehow believe that they're spiritual beings, and I think that they're basically good, and probably here to help us.
And I
I
believe
think
that
there's
too. I believe they're here to teach us, to help us not destroy ourselves, first of all. And
exactly,
I think their overall mission in life is to be positive and good and share that with everybody.
exactly. I think that rather than them being a threat, they probably see us as a threat.
Correct. Correct. Yep. All right, Jerry. Well, I appreciate you being on here. I want to thank everybody for watching the Ed Sullivan Experience. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have a podcast, you can go to any podcast streaming site and get our podcast. We're on everywhere, iTunes and everywhere. And again, I appreciate everybody. You guys have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.